Hello, brethren. This afternoon we're going to put on a presentation about teaching that is currently very active in our midst. Some of you may have heard of Wave Sheaf Ministries, and if you haven't, well, you'll be more familiar after we put this presentation on. You're going to know a little bit more about the true deception that's coming in amongst us, and how this snare is very, very worrisome because God's people are being fooled by a great imitation of the Lord's rod and His message. So we wanted to get this out today because we see red flags and hear from brethren on our Facebook ministry called Truth Tellers. We are hearing frequently about brothers coming on and teaching falsehood and strange fire doctrine. And so we wanted to make the warning tonight to let you know the difference, how you can see the Lord's rod teaching versus Wave Sheaf Ministries teaching. You can compare the two and be more fortified and stand on the rock of Jesus, His message in purity, instead of a convolution of truth and error. So we prayed, and we asked you to do the same, and we'd like to begin now. This is the text for study that we're going to bring, the test of new light. Our brethren should be willing to investigate in a candid way every point of controversy. If a brother is teaching error, those who are in responsible positions ought to know it. And if he is teaching truth, they ought to take their stand at his side. We should all know what is being taught among us. If it is truth, we need it. We are all under obligation to God to know what He sends us. He has given directions by which we may test every doctrine, to the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. If the light presented meets this test, we are not to refuse to accept it, but it because it does not agree with our ideas. Gospel Workers, page 300 and 301. And again, that's found in Counsels to Writers and Editors, page 43 and 44. So here we're counseled that there is a duty for us to warn and to know what is being taught amongst us. And if it is truth, by all means, we should embrace it. But if it's falsehood, we should sound the alarm and let the brethren know so that they can be aware when they come across this kind of deception. Okay, so Wave Sheaf Ministries is our subject in this report. And they currently have over 900 videos on their YouTube station. And they claim to be a present truth site. In other words, they're proclaiming the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist teachings. And if you go on their site, you'll see quite a lot of strange fire doctrine. And we'll get in more into that as we go. But this is probably their number one avenue in reaching brethren across the vineyard is through their videos on YouTube. Number two, they have a website, and that can be found at Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Church. And there's their link to go on that website. And then on that website, you'll find the third aspect that we find very alarming, and that is the 22 supplemental beliefs. And they are additions to the Lord's rod message. So we find this very alarming. Of course, the leader, Lennox Sams, claims they're just merely affirmations. But we disagree with that because he says they're supplemental beliefs in our message. Beliefs, he calls it. He doesn't say supplemental affirmations, but he calls them beliefs. So when we understand that these are beliefs that we should have as Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, we see clearly that this is simply more than a third pipe being added to the golden bowl, adding additions and putting things in that is not in the original rod. Now here's a picture of one of their videos. This is the leader, Lennox Sam, and he's the main propagator of this strange fire doctrine. And again, you can go on the site and see over 900 videos over the last, I want to say, 8-10 years. And it just seems like it's getting more stranger and stranger as you visit some of these YouTube videos and see what's coming from them. And particularly if you're well grounded in the rod. You know, we talk about this often, and I think this point needs to be reiterated at this point, is that when a professional money inspector, he knows how to notice the counterfeits. Well, how he does that is he first learns the original dollar bill, for instance. He'll look that over, he'll magnify it, study it. He becomes very, very familiar with the original. And once you become familiar with the original, then he's in a position to notice the counterfeit. In other words, he knows that it's different than from the original. So in order for us to really be grounded in this message that's precious from the Lord, it's called the Shepherd's Rod message, and you can find the preliminary first announcement of that in the Old Testament scriptures, and that's found in Micah 6:9, where the Lord's voice cries. It doesn't say he speaks to the city or anything. He crieth to the city, which means the church, to hear a certain message, and that is called the rod. It says, "Hear ye the rod." And then, of course, we have the supplemental announcement of Malachi 4:5, where he says the last prophet, Elijah, shall come right before the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And this is his purpose, to warn us and also to give that rod message. So if we're grounded first on this rod message, then we are in a good position to know counterfeits when they come along. Okay, so what are the main teachings of Wave Sheaf Ministries? Well, the first one is called the Day of Reckoning, and that is a pre-purification of Davidian Seventh-day Adventist. And that's based on, we recently had a phone conference, and we had Lennox Sam's original partner in a lot of these teachings and the beliefs, and his name was Brother Michael Graham. And from him, we learned that this particular quote was the foundation or the beginning seed of the Day of Reckoning that Wave Sheaf Ministries promotes. And you can read that at your leisure, but we just want to highlight the red part right now. And as a result, we are also held back and will continue to be until the Lord manifests his power and takes from amongst us the pretending ones, makes us free from sin and sinners. So right here, according to Wave Sheaf, this is a prediction that the Lord is about to do a soon pre-purification of Davidians. This is where it all stems from. And then, of course, he has a supplemental belief number 7. Of his 22 beliefs, this is the one that supports that Day of Reckoning. And you read that he says that the purification of the Seventh-day Adventist denomination, the first fruits of the harvest, is in 2 sections. The first purification will be the 11th hour church by the 6 men of Ezekiel chapter 9, in which there is an intervening time between the sealing and the slaughter. The second is in the 9th hour church by the 5 men of Ezekiel chapter 9, while the man with the inkhorn marks in the general destruction of the wicked, in which there is no intervening time between the sealing and the slaughter. And then, of course, he gives his foundational quotes from the rod message, giving proof of his Day of Reckoning. And then one of his foundations on this teaching is he goes to this harvest chart. We've done videos explaining this, and you can find that on our other YouTube channel. It's Davidian SDA Adventist, and that's called Davidian SDA Adventist, and that's our other YouTube channel. And we go into this harvest teaching with this chart that Wave Sheaf goes into. So we give more clarity, but we're going to briefly just give you a rundown here. Basically what he does is he takes this beginning area here, which simply says the day of reckoning, Matthew 25, verse 19. And then, of course, the rod chart takes this line here, and it continues to go straight, and it points right to the first fruit. You can see that right here. So what Wave Sheaf does is they take this quote from Scripture, and they use this idea that the prophet, Brother Hadaf, wrote this line here and has this arrow, meaning that the day of reckoning is going to happen to the first fruits, the 144. Well, let's put it this way: the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists are going to experience this day of reckoning. So this is where he gets that from this chart. And then, of course, you have this arrow up here on top, and that line goes straight back under here to this quote. And this is Matthew 13:49. So it's sever the wicked from among the just. So he takes this quote here from Scripture, and he says that because this arrow goes right down to the first fruits, again, this pointing to a day of reckoning among Davidian Seventh-day Adventists. So this is where he gets his idea of the day of reckoning. These are pretty standard foundational understandings that he brings to us about this teaching. But now let's look at the difference. Let's look at what the rod says about purifications to come. And that's found in this quote, track 8, page 27 and 28. We're not going to read it here because you can pause this video and go into it and read it on your own leisure. But we want to emphasize that throughout this whole reference, you see that the rod says there's 2 sections, 2 gatherings, 2 sealings, 2 separations, 2 companies. Now right there, we see that the Wave Sheaf Ministries is false. Because why? They teach there's 3 sealings, 3 separations, 3 companies, 3 gatherings. They say that Davidian Seventh-day Adventists shall be separated from the false Davidian Seventh-day Adventists. That's 1 separation. Then they say the SDA Church will have a separation from the wheat and tares. That's 2 separations. And then they say the 3rd separation will come into Babylon. But that isn't what it says, because if you see right here, when it says 2 gatherings, 2 sealings, 2 separations, 2 companies, it is describing the first fruits and the second fruits. So we cannot get any more clearer than this, brethren. This is describing both sections. And this proves that their teaching of the day of reckoning crumbles like sand. And another main point that we want to bring, key points, is that if you look in the rod, you'll find 8 references where the rod speaks about Matthew 25:19. And you'll also find that not one speak about any pre-purification of Davidian Seventh-day Adventists. This is important to realize because when we remember that chart, the prophet took that line and started with this particular quote, Matthew 25:19. And he said we should follow that understanding, and it points to the first fruits. Well, if we do a scriptural index and a rod reference index, we'll find that the rod speaks about Matthew 25:19 8 times, 8 references. And not one of them, brethren, speak about any pre-purification. And then, of course, the other one that was on top, the arrow on top, has 30 references that speak of Matthew 13:49. Again, not one speak of any pre-purification of Davidian Seventh-day Adventists. So we see here that the rod does not go into that. It's total private interpretation from Wave Sheaf Ministries. Okay, so their second teaching is that Christ and his trophies, those that arose with him, are replaced by select Davidians as the wave sheaf of the 144,000. And that can be found on this particular Leviticus tract, page 3. You can read that at your leisure, but we want to show that the underlying parts is where he gets this idea that Davidians will be the wave sheaf, because it says it purports itself to be the first of the first fruits of the living, and with this emergence of this vanguard and its army, the first fruits. So here he says that new light came. This quote was made in 1943. New light came to us about the wave sheaf, and that is the first of the first fruits shall be the wave sheaf. But if you look closely at this reference, you'll see that the first of the first fruits of the living is not equated to wave sheaf. Do you see anything like that? No. You see it's equated to the vanguard. So the vanguard is separate and distinct from the wave sheaf. Those are two different distinct groups. So you can't say that this is meaning the wave sheaf when it doesn't say it. It clearly makes a connection to the vanguard. This is important. And its army. And then, of course, they'll pull out this ceremonial harvest chart. And, of course, let's briefly go over it. Again, you can find the report on this on our other YouTube station called Davidian SDA Adventist. And that's a YouTube station where we have maybe 3 or 4 reports against what he's teaching here. But anyway, down on this chart, you'll see this very first wave sheaf here. And that's right after the cross. And these are the first fruits of the dead here. And this is the 120, the wave loaves. And then you go up on top, and you'll see another wave sheaf symbol presented. And that's right there at 1844. So this is what we have on the inspired chart. And then if you look down further, you'll see that the ceiling, where these arrows are during this period. Now keep in mind that there's no wave sheaf being presented before the Father right here. Inspiration completely leaves that blank. And there's a reason for it, because we're going to see what inspiration tells us further. Okay, here's the difference between what Wave Sheaf teaches and what the Lord's Rod teaches. And this can be found in track 3, page 85 and 86. Just as Christ and those whom he raised and took with him became the phototypical sheep, betokening the ingathering of the first fruits, the 120, of those who are to be resurrected, so also when he entered upon his priestly ministration in the first apartment of the heavenly sanctuary and presented himself and his trophies before his Father, they became the antitypical sheep, betokening the ingathering of the first fruits of those who are to be translated, the 144,000 living saints. Very, very powerful, brethren, very clear. In the light of this parallel, the spiritual condition of the 120 before the apostolistic Pentecost is clearly seen to typify the spiritual condition of the 144,000 before the future Pentecost. Again, that's found in track 3, page 85-86. Then we have another quote, and you can read this at your leisure, but we'll highlight the part here that says, from these facts it can be more clearly be seen that those whom Christ took with him were the living wave sheep, and the only one that has been offered in the heavenly sanctuary, and that as ones raised from the dead, they are the first fruits of the dead, whereas ones ever living before the Father, they are the living wave sheep of the first fruits of the living, the 144,000 servants of God, who subsequently precede the second fruits and the Feast of Tabernacles. Again, that's found in track 8, page 79 and 80. Oh, brethren, so clear. We see that this wave sheaf that was presented as first fruits of the dead has a double application. It is also because once they translated into living, they are now able to become presented, and they were presented to the Father in 1844 as the ever-living wave sheaf of the first fruits of the living, 144,000. Wow. So we see clearly that Wave Sheaf is teaching a strange fire doctrine. This is what the original rod teaches in regards to the Wave Sheaf. Praise the Lord. So we want to bring a warning counsel, and you can find that General Conference Special, page 7 and 8. You can read that at your leisure. But the important thing to remember is, nevertheless, one's only safety will be in the teaching of Elijah, for there will be no other voice of timely truth and authority to whom one may turn. Any others will lead their victims blindfolded into perdition. So, brethren, we have another voice coming in, and he's trying to teach us a strange fire doctrine. And we follow that, we're going to be led into blindfolded perdition. So in the conclusion of this report, we want to bring in the good part of this report, and that is that there are two organizations teaching a "Thus saith the Lord." And that the first one is found, the General Association of Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, that's known as Mountaindale. And of course you have the address there on the website and the phone number. And number two is the General Association of Davidian Seventh-day Adventists Waco Division. Of course, this one is found in Waco, Texas. And you have the information there. So if you take the time to, like we said at the very beginning of this presentation, take the time to learn the original Rod message, you're in a much better position to know the counterfeit. So we wanted to bring this study today to warn you that be careful, brethren. There's some clear deceptions out there, and they're very, very, very tricky. If you watch their videos and you're not well grounded, you can very well become snagged. And apparently, from what we see, this snag is being widespread amongst us today. So stay close to the Lord, stay close to His original message, and you'll be safe. So we thank you for joining us today, and may God continue to guide you into all truth, John 16:13, and may you stay in the straight and narrow path. Amen.